couldn't. I love the night. That's the only time I feel really alive.
That's what David wanted.
Blood, I was to find, was a necessity as well.
A vampire in love with a slayer. It's rather poetic. I am the monster the breathing men would kill. I am Dracula.
Good evening, my fellow vampire lovers. The sun is going down and you know what that means. It's time for me to record another episode of my podcast, The Beautiful Dead. As always, I'm Lena Nazari. Just go to The Beautiful Podcast, The Beautiful Dead Podcast on Instagram. It is October. I wait all year for October. Not only that, but I take October very seriously on this podcast because I know this is when people are seeking out the spooky stuff that they normally don't look for, and this is when I get some new eyeballs and I want to do it right. I want to honor October. Not only that, but the day this episode drops, I've only been back for a few days. I was in New Orleans, and chances are, if we're being honest, I am probably still recovering. If I partied as hard as I think I probably did, considering it's the end of September, it's my favorite place in the world, and it was my birthday, I am probably still hungover. And if you're not following me on Instagram, you would have missed all those shenanigans, including any drunk pictures or drunk videos that I posted. So, I would go join right now if I were you. I was thinking of what can I do this year that's like a little bit different. And I was thinking about last October, and I was thinking about how much has changed in 1 year, which blows my mind. I have my 4th book out. I have all these new cons to attend, a new panel to take to those cons, and I finally walked away from my second job, which I never thought I would walk away from, but I did it to focus more on growing my dreams and taking all of this stuff to where I really want it to be. But more than that, most importantly, in the last year, I have made truly some of the most awesome friends. I have the coolest people around me that I get to call friends. And that's when it hits me. Why don't I bring all these cool people on my podcast? Like all these cool conversations that we have in private, why don't I bring it onto the podcast and share it with all of you? We talk about all the things we love, books, movies, TV shows, music. Why don't we bring this onto the podcast so all of you can join it? So last week I had my super cool friend Mark, the vampire professor and priest who knows just as much, if not more than me, about vampires. I hope that you enjoyed our lesson because I had so much fun to do it. But that was a little more like going to class, right? These next 4 episodes are more like sitting around with the cool kids in the basement and just having some fun conversations. So tonight we are going to start the generations discussions. We are going to talk about our favorite vampire movies, books, TV shows, music, broken down by decades. And tonight is 1960 to 1979 with my favorite co-star from The Dark Knight Rises, Tony from Hack the Movies. And let me tell you something. When I reached out to him and said, hey, do you want to come on and talk about movies from the 1960 to 1979? Immediately he was like, yes, I want to talk about Nosferatu the Vampyre. It was like an immediate response. So before we get to that discussion about that movie, in pretty much the coolest location in the world, a location that you probably couldn't guess if you had all night to guess, before we get to that recording, let's hit some honorable mentions, okay? We already did the Hammer horror films, right, in August. We hit 4 of them. But I will say that 1960 to 1979 was like prime time for Hammer films when we're talking about vampires. And we will probably discuss more of those in the future, but I don't think we need to hit those too hard. We've covered a lot of them. I'll tell you what we need to talk about. 1975 brought us Salem's Lot. Salem's Lot, the book, was published in 1975. And then in 1979, we got the miniseries, which brought us pretty much like one of the scariest scenes ever, which was the boy in the window, okay? You have to remember, I was young when I saw this. It was on national television. It stuck with me to this day, that boy scratching on the window. Whee. In 1976, we got another famous vampire novel. It was published. Now, we wouldn't see it on the screen until the 90s, which will be next week with Jacob Gibbons. But in 1976, the book came out. And that, of course, famously, is Anne Rice's Interview with the Vampire. It came out in 1976. I found out that she made $12,000 in advance, which was like huge back in the time. Famously, it was her coping with the death of her very young daughter and trying to wrap her brain around the idea of death. But considering she only got $12,000 up front, that is like a drop in the bucket because she would very quickly sell like 8 million copies. So I don't think I'm alone in saying that this book changed vampires forever. Now, those 2 decades also brought us Ganja and Hess, Frank Langella's Dracula, Martin, The Fearless Vampire Killers, which have all been covered on this podcast, so we don't need to hit those again. Something that I haven't covered, but were huge TV hits, and I promise I'm going to cover them in the future, is the TV shows Dark Shadows, which brought us Barnabas Collins, and I will definitely cover that in the future. And the Munsters. I don't know if a lot of you remember, but Grandpa and Lily were vampires. So that brought vampires into living rooms across the country. And last but not least, we got to hit on this because it is really important, and I'm sure we're going to talk about it more next week. But we got this very important piece of vampire music, which is Bela Lugosi's Dead. That came out in 1979. It would really hit when the movie Hunger came out, which is in the 80s, so we'll talk about it next week with Jacob Gibbons. Come back next week. But I have teased you enough. I am going to go ahead and get to the footage of myself and Tony from Hack the Movies talking about the 1979 Nosferatu the Vampire. I am drinking Nosferatu for my vampire tea this evening to align with the discussion we're having. I hope that you have as much fun watching this as I had filming it. Please let me know down below if you've only watched this because of Tony. I'll be interested to see how many people came here just for Tony, which is totally fine. I'm not offended at all, but please let me know anything that you think that I missed from 1960 to 1979, and I will see you back next week.
Who are you? And what are you doing on my show, and where have you brought me?
You should know who I am. I am Tony.
For the people who don't know you.
I am Tony from Hack the Movies, very famous YouTuber. I hit levels of fame that you could never achieve. I was in The Dark Knight Rises, okay?
I was also in The Dark Knight Rises. Tony, we were in the same scene.
Okay, then we're equally famous. Yes, I'm from Hack the Movies. Talk about movies new and old inside a video store. Occasionally I talk about vampire movies with Dracula. I don't know if you have any familiarity with that.
I've heard the name.
Yeah, so what movie are we talking about today?
We're talking about Nosferatu the Vampire. So Tony and Lena Lore, we met each other at Monster Mania a couple years ago. We were we stared at each other through the whole thing. And then got the same placement the following year. And so then we started chatting. And so when I knew I wanted to do spooky season, I knew I wanted to have a different guest every weekend. And because you're so famous and so respected in the movie review community, I knew that you had to be on the show.
And I said, I will only do this if we shoot it at Buffalo Bill's house.
In the basement.
In the basement of Buffalo Bill's house.
And weirdly enough, you said I wasn't allowed to tell anybody where I was going, and I had to turn the location off on my phone, which is weird, but I did it.
And I asked for your clothing size.
Right. Which I think is fine.
Yes. We are filming this in Buffalo Bill's house.
Yes, we are.
If you want to know more, go to buffalobillshouse.com.
Perfect.
All right, continue.
So I reached out to you and I said, hey, I really want you to be on 60s and 70s. We're going to talk about 60s and 70s. And you immediately said, I want to do Nosferatu.
I love this movie.
Which is awesome.
Yes.
So this is something I didn't know about you.
Yes.
And I'm embarrassed to say, as somebody who's been obsessed with vampires for 40 years, I had never seen this one.
You know what? Don't be worried about that. I hadn't seen this until a few years back.
Yeah.
It's a movie I always knew about. I definitely saw this VHS in video stores growing up. I never rented it. And I like Werner Herzog. I haven't watched all his stuff, but I enjoy like his documentary stuff and his narrative stuff. I mean, him and Nicolas Cage with Bad Lieutenant, Port of Call, New Orleans was like my favorite movie, like 2009. So he's got a very good catalog, and I'm like, I've never seen his early work. I've never seen this Nosferatu remake, and this is almost always streaming free, or at least on a big site. It's two versions, English and German.
Yes.
So yeah, a few years ago, I threw this baby on, and I fell in love with it right away. Okay. There's like a cycle of movies that I will put on at night to help me go to sleep. This has become one of the new ones. So I watch this. Okay. I watch most of this movie several times a month. It just totally nailed everything for me.
Okay.
And I'm excited
well, this is good. I like to have people on that maybe have a different opinion than I do, which is great. We can have this conversation.
Yes. And unfortunately, you don't have that here because you're going to agree that it's the greatest thing to ever come out of this. That's okay.
So as you said, famously, they recorded every scene in English and then again in German. Yeah. And he said the German one is the most authentic one.
Yes.
So
I don't know about every scene because there are some.
Most of them.
Yeah, there are some scenes where you can tell they're like, we're not doing this again. We're just going to ADR. I feel like the close-ups were done twice.
Yeah, it said majority. But maybe there were some people who couldn't do both. But it looks like the leads were able to do both. And it is filmed in Germany, the Netherlands, and Slovakia. Do you know why they couldn't film in Romania?
Oh my God, I read the fact last night and I'm forgetting.
Yeah.
Why?
So Nicolae Ceausescu was the leader of Romania at the time. Dictator.
Yeah.
Okay. Not a good person.
Okay.
Thought Vlad Tepes was a hero, was like the best thing that ever happened to Romania. Okay. Put out a postage stamp with his little ugly profile. And so when they contacted and said, we want to come film in Romania, he said, only if you present Dracula as a hero, he can't do anything bad. And they were like, yeah, we'll just go to Slovakia.
Yeah, we're just going to go to Slovakia.
So famously, he would end up, there would be a coup and the people would turn against him. And so he was executed for being a terrible person.
Yes.
Yeah, that's why they couldn't film it. So they had to fake Transylvania.
That's funny.
Yeah. So Nosferatu, the first time I watched it, and like I do for every movie, watched it one time, just watched it. And then the second time took my notes. And I think I texted you at one point and was like, it's a weird one.
Yeah.
I'm on this ride. I got to stick it out, but it's not what I expected it to be. So we open on mummies.
Yes. Which
right
are like Mexican, I think.
In Mexico.
Yes.
This guy goes down into catacombs with real mummies and rearranges them. Smallest to largest.
A little disrespectful. I think mummies on display is already disrespectful, but
he rearranged them.
Move them around.
Because you got to get the shot, right? No matter what. Yeah. So I was like, wow, we are in it.
Yeah.
We are in it now.
From the get-go, I'm in. The music is so good. And starting with like the mummy and the imagery, like when I was looking at this, I'm like, oh, I love this already.
So I do have to give you that. The soundtrack is wonderful.
Yeah, I will some nights just put the soundtrack on. Like it's so good.
I get it.
But yeah, the mummy thing like really unsettles you right from the get-go.
I was like, oh, we're in. We're in for a weird ride.
Yeah.
So then Lucy wakes up because in this movie, Lucy is married to Jonathan. Mina's like a tiny little side character. Quincy again gets left out.
They swap the names.
Also,
you mentioned beforehand that like Dracula just went in the public domain at the time. And I'm like, I feel like he was in public domain for a while. In America, he was.
Correct.
In Europe, he had just gone into the public domain. They
literally waited until the second that they were allowed to use Dracula.
Yeah.
And they were like, it's go time, boys. Go. Because
famously, have you done the original Nosferatu?
Yes.
Yeah, the wife of Bram Stoker had it like destroyed. Some prince survived, so I get that's why. Yeah, Werner Herzog loved the original Nosferatu.
A lot of people do.
Yeah.
I mean, it's iconic. We probably wouldn't have some of the films we have now.
Yeah.
We wouldn't have a SpongeBob episode without Nosferatu. So that wouldn't happen.
SpongeBob, where would we be?
Where would we be without Nosferatu? SpongeBob wouldn't have that bit. So Lucy wakes up. She's had a nightmare. And we see that they sleep in twin beds.
Yeah.
She's like, okay, all right.
It's cute.
Okay, they sleep in twin beds. And then we get some nice music, kittens playing with a locket, beautiful imagery, very artistic. It's like watching an art piece come to life. And you're like, okay.
Real quick, the actress playing Lucy.
Isabella Adjani.
Yes, from Possession.
Yes.
Which is another movie I finally watched recently.
Yes, that is her.
That is, yeah.
She did a phenomenal job.
Yes, she's great in
really
this. This character's very well. Actually, maybe book version of Mina. This one's a bit of a go-getter, but more competent than most interpretations.
She's almost a final girl.
Yes,
almost.
Yes.
But we'll get there.
Yeah.
So they're having breakfast. It's beautiful. It's bright. Everything's in white. So you know everything's about to go horribly wrong because they're just too happy.
Yeah.
So Jonathan's walking to work in a Willy Wonka outfit. I'm pretty sure that's Willy Wonka's outfit.
Yeah.
And he gets to work, and his boss is Renfield, who is clearly insane.
Yes, this is a very bizarre interpretation. One of the few things I don't like about this movie is
the giggling.
When I watched this last night, I fell asleep briefly, and the giggling woke me up. And then I fell asleep again, and then I woke up to Happy Feet. Tubi auto-played Happy Feet.
Yes.
And then I finished the movie this morning, and it again auto-played Happy Feet.
Because I think those two go hand in hand.
I don't know what in the world.
Right.
They're like, what could person's watching this, what could we follow this up with? The hundreds of vampire movies we have on Tubi? No, let's feed this guy Happy Feet.
Right. So Renfield is obviously insane.
Yeah.
They never tell us why.
Yeah. Much like the book.
And we've talked about this,
Yeah.
like why, what happened? Because he says to Jonathan, I have something for you to do. I need you to go to Transylvania. There's a count who wants to buy a house here. We're going to sell him the house around the corner from you. He's going to pay a shit ton of money, which you need because you're a husband. And so we want you to go. But Renfield says you may pay with sweat or blood. And I was like, okay, so he knows Dracula's a vampire.
Yeah. And if I was Harker, I'd be like, I'm sorry, what did you mean by that?
And also like, why don't we just get you a hot bath, put you to bed, and I will run the company? And then there's an old guy in the back listening to the whole thing who says nothing.
Is he the old guy who comes back at the very end of the movie?
I don't know.
I think I might be the same old guy.
I don't know because I was like, what company is this?
Yeah.
So, of course, he's like, I have to do it because we need the money and I want to get my wife everything she ever needed.
Yeah, and she doesn't want him to go.
She doesn't want him to go. And so, but she's a good wife and she's a good woman. So she's like, take me for a walk on the beach and then you can go. But I have a bad feeling.
Yeah.
Right? And so we find out it is a 4-week trip by land because it's like all on horseback.
Yeah, that's got to suck.
That's a lot to ask of somebody.
Oh, was there no train or?
I don't know. I have a lot of questions, but it's supposed to be 1850 maybe?
I think so.
But still, there were trains, right?
I didn't look at the years. Did they set it back?
But listen, of all the things in this movie that we should be
1850,
questioning,
yeah.
like, all right, he's on horseback. So he goes on horseback. She has a bad feeling. She's like, please come back to me. And he's like, silly woman, you're hysterical. You and your bad feelings. Just go sit down. Crochet. It'll be fine.
Go crochet about it.
Correct. Yes. But he does say, and this is when we find out Mina and unnamed man are supposed to look out for Lucy while he's gone.
Let's call him Quincy.
Okay, we'll call him Quincy. So he gets to Transylvania.
Yeah.
And he shows up in this little tavern. He's exhausted. The horse is exhausted. The townspeople are so excited to see him.
Yeah.
They are like babbling and running around him. And they're so excited that this new person has come into town. And he goes, he sits, and he wants to eat. And we have the classic scene of him saying, I'm going to Castle Dracula. And everyone goes,
no, don't do that. Don't do that.
No.
They all look horrified.
I know. No.
And the one guy really tries to get him not to go.
He tries very hard.
What is it? He has a line. He's like, they say there is no castle except for in the imagination of man or something like that.
Yes. So he said, you have to go talk to I don't think we're allowed to call them gypsies anymore.
Yeah,
the Romany people.
Yeah.
He says, go talk to the traveling Romany people and they will tell you that castle is ruins. There's nothing up there. There's nothing for you to go to. And he's like, I don't care. I have to go.
Yeah.
This is my job. Business, business, business. And we find out at this point in time that everybody in Transylvania knows of vampires. So in Germany, they're learned men. They don't think vampires are real.
Yeah, they haven't interacted with them.
Correct. Yeah. But here, in this tiny village, they know vampires are real. And the lady even comes into his room and says, take this cross and take this book. It will tell you everything you need to know about vampires.
Yeah, she has like all written out, and it plays in later on.
Perfect, yes. Yeah. So he's like, crazy lady, but okay, you're a nice old lady. We're assuming the book is in Romanian, right?
I guess he can just read it. Well, maybe.
Is it in English? Because
he wrote it in English. I don't know.
But it looks very old, and I would assume this is a Transylvanian book. But okay, all right. So she's like, everything you need to know conveniently about vampires is in this journal, in this book, and he sticks it in his satchel for later.
Yes.
Oh, he reads a little bit of it. Then he was like, the pish posh.
Which is what I would do. I'd be
old
like,
world
get
stuff.
this out of here.
There's
There's
no
no
such
such
modern
thing as,
man.
no
He's
such
not gonna
thing as
believe any of
vampires. I'll be
Correct.
good.
And as always happens in these movies, the lead says, oh, it's superstition. You guys are all Looney Tunes, but I'm a learned man, so.
I don't think Jonathan called them Looney Tunes, but yes.
Something along those lines.
What's a Looney Tune?
Yes. It's exposition on my part. So he comes the next morning. He says, I have to go. I have to go. So he tries to hire a coachman. The coach is like, not going to happen.
Nope.
And he says, well, give me one of your horses. And the coachman's like, I need my horses. I have nothing to give you.
He just goes
So
through
he
the Borgo
walks.
Pass. He goes through the Borgo Pass on foot.
So he walks. Okay. All right, sir. He's okay.
Yeah.
So he arrives at the castle. And when he arrives at the castle after like a long montage of, obviously it's been all day and then the nighttime.
Yeah. Is this around the time where we get like the footage of like the bats in slow motion with the music?
We get that all throughout the movie.
That bat footage is amazing.
It is.
How they caught that in super slow motion.
Yeah.
That's like my favorite thing
I
about
think that
this
was
film.
part of her dream in the beginning, and then it shows up again. Like it shows up throughout the
Yeah.
film. That same image with the music. And so we see him walking. And he comes in, and it's like an entrance into this castle, this estate. And we finally get to see our vampire.
Good old
We finally get to see
Klaus Kinski.
a great shot, by the way,
Yeah.
framed wonderfully. And so I'm going to assume in this moment, Jonathan is so exhausted from this trip. And also, he's, a modern man who has very good manners. So he does not show any shock at all when he sees this man in the doorway who's clearly not human.
But I love his little hat. The hat is great.
No, the hat is
The hat
so
is my
good.
favorite. But yeah, so usually
Yes.
in Dracula, this is where Nosferatu differs from the other Dracula stuff. Both Nosferatus. Usually Dracula's trying to put on like a front and trying
Not
to
at all.
be very. I get like
not at
in
all.
the book and whatnot, he's very old and he's depowered at this point. But this one, in the original, he was just a scary looking guy, but he was trying to act normal. This one, he's just like,
Right. So-
hi.
So let's look at Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Yeah.
It's an old man that's a little unsettling, but
Yeah.
you say to yourself, he's old, he has different customs than me. Obviously, it's going to be different here. But this character is bald, pointy teeth, or pointy ears, two sharp, very sharp teeth right in the front, long, like the nails are so long, the fingers are so long. And he's like, welcome.
He acts like a junkie who like needs a fix. Like he looks like he's about to go to sleep any second. And I did hear apparently Werner Herzog would get Klaus riled up and get like arguments out of him, so he would be exhausted by the time they really started shooting because he wanted that kind of I don't know why he wanted that kind of performance out of him.
Well, and famously, Klaus Kinski was impossible to work with.
Oh, yeah, he was an asshole.
Awful, just awful.
Yeah, there's an unofficial sequel to this where he did some pretty fucked up things.
Right.
Yeah.
So notoriously just an awful person. And
when your kids don't show up at your funeral, you probably fucked up something. Yeah.
And he made some character choices in this.
Yeah.
He made some strong choices. But I just found it so difficult to believe that Jonathan was in no way bothered by this person at all.
I guess I'm used to it because of the Coppola movie. There's weird shit happening, and Jonathan's like, huh, okay.
I have seen strange things already.
It takes him so long to get to that point. I'm like, I think strange thing number one, I would have been like, ah!
Right. But again, that's that stereotype of like the British person who would never let their manners fall by the wayside. Yeah. And so I guess that's what we're going to say about this one. He's exhausted. He needs to get Count Dracula's signature so he can take all this money. He's already come so far. So maybe he's like, whatever, I'm going to entertain this weirdo. Yeah. I'm going to get him to sign on the dotted line. I'm going to get them on here. But they sit down to eat, and Jonathan's just chomping away, like just shoving food in his mouth. And Dracula is just...
creeping up on him. It's so disturbing.
He's like mouth breathing and staring at him. I'm just like, this is the weirdest experience.
Again, most of the time they either make him look very charming or he's an old guy who's trying. He knows how to act, but he physically can't make himself look good. But this one's just like, how's the food?
And I was just like,
There's a lot of like the way the movie's shot. There's like very harsh lighting on Dracula sometimes, like clearly just like a spotlight that's off camera, and then like really just long scenes with very few cuts, and it's very unsettling.
It's extremely unsettling, but maybe that's the purpose for you as the viewer to just be uncomfortable.
Yes.
Because it worked. I was so uncomfortable. And then he's like pouring the wine. So I'm like, oh, we're going to get it. We're going to get the, nope.
Yeah.
No line.
Yeah.
Perfect. He's pouring. Oh, and that's the other thing. He's pouring, but staring at Jonathan, not looking at what he's doing. Yeah, he's just like, in the biggest glass I've ever seen. It looks like a vase. So all of a sudden, it goes from 0 to 10 very quickly. Jonathan's up. Dracula's like...
That scene of him just like going up to him like...
That escalated so fast. And then Jonathan's like, I'm just going to go to sleep.
That's right.
Like, how are you sleeping?
I guess that was him being hypnotized.
Maybe.
I think that's what it was.
We're going to go with that.
Yeah. Also, this version of Dracula, no wives.
I know.
Couldn't get any ladies.
But, and we're going to get to this, we find out later on because the next morning, Jonathan wakes up, he's still in the chair. And he wakes up and he's like, that was weird. But it's fine. It's a new day. Yeah. Everything's fine. And so... he gets up and he is looking in the mirror, but we don't see any fang marks. But the implication is
that he was bit.
That he was bit.
Yeah.
So we don't see it, but we're like assuming he was fed on that night.
Maybe he wasn't bit on the neck.
Maybe
he hit it.
Oh, maybe.
I don't want to suggest
Jonathan was out.
I don't want to suggest where he bit him, but he was bit somewhere probably.
But he makes a point to look and you don't see anything.
Yeah, because he probably read that from the book maybe.
Perhaps.
Yeah.
And he goes, there's food spread out. And he grabs a grape and he starts to tour the castle. And this is the first time that we see the boy, right?
Yeah, so this castle has like ghosts.
Yes.
There's other like supernatural stuff around it. And I assume they're ghosts of previous victims.
Oh, and I missed something.
Okay.
The reason it escalated is because one of my favorite tropes, he cut his finger.
Right, and it like drove him nuts.
Nosferatu popped that finger in his mouth.
Yeah. Very quickly. He couldn't control himself.
He's like, oh, let me.
Like other Draculas would be like, oh, that's great. Yeah.
So you see it in movies all the time where someone cuts themselves and the vampire's like, oh,
yeah.
I mustn't. But he's like, give me that finger.
Yeah.
So that's
go to sleep. I need to drink out. Oh, that's what he did it probably. Just sucked it out.
It's gonna, I don't know. You're just not gonna get a lot of blood out of a finger. But yeah, he popped it right in his mouth. Yeah. He didn't care how weird it was. He went for it. So
sorry. You literally just said he popped it in his mouth. Yeah, he didn't care how weird it was. He went for it.
I know what I said. I stand by what I said. The whole thing is so weird.
Clip that out of context.
So this might, okay. You know your viewers are gonna.
All right, keep going.
Anywho, so this is where we start to recognize that the castle is actually not there.
No, it's
because there's a shot of the son on ruins. So he's walking around ruins, seeing a full castle, and does that mean the food isn't real? Like,
I guess so. Yeah, it's part of it. I feel like Coppola actually took this idea for his movie, where like the vampires are so unnatural they can affect reality around them.
Yeah.
But also, like, Dracula's powers, like, he's like making this illusion.
So that means he's already in his head.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's
so
already in his head.
You enter his world, his like domain, and he has like he can manipulate things and create illusions.
Which is, I like it. I'm here for that. And
maybe that's why he's spending so much of his power making it look like there's a mansion, and he doesn't have enough.
He doesn't have power for manners.
Yeah, he doesn't have enough power for manners or to give himself like hair. He just can't.
It's a bad toupee. So this is when we see the fiddling boy, the Romany boy, that we come to realize is a ghost because we see him. Jonathan doesn't see him, but Jonathan hears the music. So that's the indication to us that this is a ghost. So ghosts are roaming the castle that doesn't exist. We assume this is a victim, a previous victim.
That's what I would think,
Yeah, but I saw and I thought of Lestat.
Oh,
with Nikki and the gypsy on So as he is walking around, and we realize that there's ghosts, we realize the castle is actually ruins, just like the Romany people tried to tell him. Jonathan starts writing in his journal because he's saying there's no postal service. So I want to keep track of everything that's happened so that when I get back, Lucy, you can read everything that I've been through.
Which is a good plan.
Yes.
Which that is actually something from the book where they get all their journals together.
That's
Lucy compiled, or not, Nina compiles all the journals. Yeah, that's
one of the things I love about the book.
Yeah.
And I forgot to say that when Jonathan falls asleep after having his finger sucked on, Lucy again wakes up from a nightmare because she's got a bad feeling. And there's a bat like crawling around on her curtain.
Yeah.
So she's like, she just lays there.
Because I guess he has some control over animals. I don't know what his range is, but
I'm thinking that is just something is happening in her world because she's so connected to Jonathan. Yeah. That she's like seeing almost images of what's happening to him.
Yeah, they don't do the reincarnated lover thing.
No, they do
not. So
yeah,
it's weird that she has like all these like visions and stuff.
Yeah, she has feelings, she has visions. So maybe she's so connected to Jonathan. They're so connected to each other that she's like sensing what he's going through. So he's written in his journal, and that night he's presenting the papers to Dracula. And Dracula whines a little bit about how lonely eternity is, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
That's one of the tropes I hate is when vampires whine about, but eternity is so sad and so long and so boring. And you're like,
I mean, I guess, so I brought this up in my Bram Stoker Dracula. I guess it would suck if you have the rule where you need to be with your soil. It's like, you can't like fucking go. And he got turned so long ago where like long distance travel was impossible. It's like, well, where am I going to go? So like, I feel like even in the book, like civilization got to a point where Dracula physically can go other places. Like it's this is the first time in history.
And also, who's going to hang out with him? Because everybody knows what he is. He can't hide it. So he, I guess, is very, very alone. And this is one of the things we talked about with the book is like Dracula would have been doing the cooking and like anything in the house because there was no servants, there was nothing. I mean, there was just people filling boxes with dirt.
He had the brides.
That's true. He had the brides.
And yeah, you're right. He did have the Romani that he didn't eat. He probably like bribed them with like gold and stuff. He's like, hey, can you like cook a chicken? I don't know how to do it.
Can you cook a chicken? Fill that box with dirt and then roast a chicken. It's not that complicated. So as he's doing that, he's pulling stuff out and the locket comes out. This is the locket that we saw the kittens playing with.
Yes.
And he snatches that locket up, sees his
no
wife.
No good manners.
And immediately is like, give me that paper. Give me that paper. And Jonathan's like, don't you want to talk money? And he's like, no, whatever it is, it's fine.
Yeah, whatever. I
don't know. It has nothing to do with your hot wife. Give me that paper. And then he even says, and I'm living right around the corner from you and your hot wife, right?
Yeah.
Right around the corner, right? Give me that paper. He's like, way too eager.
Yeah, we're not home a lot. Don't visit.
Exactly. So he signs off on there, and he says about Lucy, what a lovely throat. Jonathan has to be the densest person on earth.
Yeah, if I had a girlfriend and someone went, my girlfriend has a lovely throat, I would have been like, I'm sorry, what?
And I'm moving next door, right?
Yeah. I'm like, you said you were moving next door? Okay. We need to check listings when we get home. We got to get out of here.
Right. And did he write in his journal, and Dracula sucked on my finger? Or is he never telling his wife that part? So at this point in time, he's reading from the vampire book. I don't know if he's just bored or now he's like a little like.
Well, now that he's seen some weird shit, he's like, I should probably read that book.
I should probably go back to that book that conveniently is in German or English.
Yes. Whatever one we don't know.
And this is interesting because I've never seen this.
Yeah.
The vampires sleep in soil that is filled with the Black Death. Oh. So it's plague-filled soil.
Okay.
So not just the soil of his homeland, but it has the Black Death in it. So
or does is him just being there give it plague?
But if so, he would have wiped out Transylvania and Romania, right?
Yeah.
So this is the thing where I get a little confused, but we'll get to that. So he goes to bed. Dracula comes in and feeds from him because papers have been signed. He doesn't really need Jonathan anymore, right? So he comes, he feeds from him. Jonathan does not put up any fight. Yeah. So we're going to assume mind control.
Yeah, and I feel like when he fell asleep, he maybe like started turning him. He's not fully turned.
Right. Yeah. Oh, possible. So that first night when he was fed on, maybe he's already starting to fall prey.
Yeah, we don't know how does he have to drink Dracula's blood to finish it?
No.
If that is the case, then they breeze past it. But yeah, you're right.
And that's a trope I hate. Yeah. I hate when they don't do the embrace.
Yeah.
And the turning in this movie is very confusing. But we'll get to that.
Oh, yeah.
So Dracula's feeding from Jonathan. Lucy wakes up. Oh, no, she's sleepwalking.
Yes.
She screams out Jonathan's name. And when she does, Dracula reacts.
Yeah. Like I guess.
Which is interesting.
I guess whatever feeding he's done for them has given him a psychic link to her.
Some kind of psychic link.
Yeah.
So this is when we get our Dr. Van Helsing character.
Yeah.
Because he is called in to find out what is wrong with Lucy, right? And he says it must be a brain fever. I guess that's a thing. That's a diagnosis.
Get some leeches. Brain fever.
It's either from her womb, which we know makes people crazy, or it's a brain fever.
Obviously. Those are the only two things.
Those are the only two things that can afflict women at this time.
Every time a girlfriend was yelling at me, I'm like, yeah, you have a brain fever.
It must be brain.
Let me put a thermometer in your head. I don't know how that works.
Never heard that, but okay. All right. So now Jonathan's awake. He's trapped in the castle. He's been locked in.
Yeah.
He descends into the basement and finds Dracula in his coffin, which he has a broken lid. You didn't just find another lid? I mean, like.
Maybe it like broke that day.
Or maybe because he's never had anyone over. He never thought about it. But like, you're resting. You're vulnerable. Maybe have a full.
Well, maybe his good coffins he's using for the trip.
Good coffins are being packed up. Right?
Yeah, and he's like, I'll just sleep in the bad.
This is my travel coffin.
I'll just sleep in the bad one for now.
Exactly. Dracula moves into, so Jonathan sees Dracula move into one of the crates that is stacked up and ready to go. So he takes off on the wagon. Jonathan's trapped.
Yeah. So he figures out a way.
So he goes, you know what I think is going to work? Because it works in every movie.
Which haven't been invented yet, but he somehow
bed
knows.
Sheets all together. Climbing, scaling a wall.
It works about as well as you'd imagine.
Falls, cracks his head open. I guarantee he's broken several bones.
And I think the boy comes back.
The boy wakes him up.
Yeah.
So this is where we think maybe this is a good ghost. This is a previous victim because he wakes Jonathan up, who absolutely has a concussion.
But yet somehow was able to make it back through the Borgo Pass to the town.
Correct. So he finds his way back. I said the ghost boy fiddles him awake. So now the ships are on, or the coffins are on the ship, headed for Wismar. Right?
Yes.
Wismar.
Yeah.
Jonathan's now in a Romany hospital, and he keeps mumbling, like, don't let the black coffins go. Don't let the black coffins go.
And spoiler, they go.
Gone. Too late, buddy.
Is this where they start investigating them? Well, first they're on a raft, and that scene looked terrifying. I'm like, I feel like that raft is going to tip at any moment.
Yeah. Treacherous. This is a treacherous voyage.
Yeah.
So I realized the black coffin is because it has the Black Death inside it, not because the coffins are black. Yeah. So I caught that the second time.
Yeah.
Like, oh, the black coffins because of the Black Death apparently is in the soil.
Yeah. They check the soil.
Yes.
In the most unsettling way. They're like, experimental earth. Can you open one and check it? Thank God they didn't open Dracula's, or else it would have been like, ah! But they check and there's rats everywhere. And then the guy puts his bare foot in there and is shocked that he gets bit. I'm like, why did you do that?
I know.
Also, if I'm seeing like soil with rats, I would be like, oh, don't put this on the ship. There's rats in it.
So many rats.
Yeah.
Hundreds of rats.
So many rats.
So many. Movie. I, as an actress, would have been like, that's a no. I'm not doing that. And apparently they were white rats that were dyed gray because they couldn't get enough gray rats.
Oh, what happened there?
So if you'll look, you'll see some of the rats are like palely gray.
Did anything happen to the rats?
Gray. I don't.
Is this going to be like the tiger from Beastmaster?
Please don't look into it.
Okay.
Just remain happy.
Don't look.
Don't read about what
If
happened.
You're wondering why the black tiger is an orange tiger in Beastmaster 2, don't look up what happened to the real tiger from Beastmaster 1. Spoiler, cats lick themselves, so you probably shouldn't cover them in paint if you don't know if it's toxic. But anyway, keep going.
Speaking of animal cruelty,
yes,
Renfield is now in an asylum because he bit a cow.
That's right. Oh, it's like a box of bugs. He's like, ah.
Yeah. So he's being overseen by Van Helsing because he's the only doctor in town, I'm guessing, right? And he's rambling about the blood is life, the blood is life. Yeah. We know that line. And he hears the rustling of the sails. So he's connected to Dracula.
Yes. Somehow it's just like in the book, somehow they have a psychic connection.
Somehow there was a previous experience where if Dracula had access to Renfield, why didn't he just sign the contract with Renfield? Why did
Renfield didn't have the contracts? Maybe it was just like, oh yeah, he was going through Romania.
He went through a 4-week voyage and then forgot the contract.
Maybe Renfield worked for the same thing. It was like, hey, I'm going to go to Romania, see if there's any prospects who want to buy land. And someone told him about Count Dracula. And it was like, oh, I don't have...
He traveled 4 weeks just to do a cold call.
I guess so. Well, maybe someone was like, oh, by the way, while you're here, there's a guy called Count Dracula. We don't really talk to him.
If you could get him out of here, we would really appreciate
that. Are there any more counts? Yeah.
If you could take that weirdo to Germany, we would be so happy.
By the way, he's been there for like 500 years. Can you let us know if he's having kids or if it's the same Dracula? He actually doesn't come out. We don't know.
Yes, exactly. So, Renfield, and as a nurse, I can tell you that you get people admitted to the hospital with the most insane backstories. Yeah. So when the orderly's like, the guy that bit the cow, I'm like, that's on point. That sounds about right.
Cow biter. Yeah, I know. He's room 5. Yeah, I got it.
Not that cow biter. The other cow biter.
The other one.
Because we have multiple. John's in bad shape.
Yeah.
He's
like sweating. The makeup effect is really good. He looks like he's like just sweating horribly. Yeah.
But he is a man. So he's like getting his jacket on and they're saying, please don't go. You can't travel like this. He's like, I'm a man and my lady needs me. And he will make it back to Germany. But don't ask any questions about how.
Yeah, he'll just do it.
He's going to do it because he's a man. So on the ship with Dracula, the plague has spread through. All the crew is dead. We just see the guy strapped to the steering wheel.
So the captain. So they've done the Demeter thing.
Correct.
Yes, and he straps himself so he can come in.
What's not clear to me, I do love how they had the ship sort of just kind of like drift in and just kind of stop via wall. And people are like, there's nobody on that ship. So they say that it was the plague, but we're assuming it's a mix of the plague and the vampire feeding on them.
Well,
because there is a plague.
There is, but I feel like that's just Dracula killing people.
Right.
And the plague is, they're wrongly thinking it's the plague, but really it's him draining them.
But when you see it at the very end, like there is a plague.
Yeah.
So there must be a plague that comes with him. So I don't know if the rats follow him and the rats have the plague or the plague is in the
Because whoever survives at the end have all gone crazy, we learned. Except, well, not all of them, but...
They know they're sick.
Yeah.
They're like, we have caught the plague, so we're going to have one last, hurrah.
Okay, that's what,
So I'm watching this. I watched it twice because I was like, I just feel like I missed something the first time. Yeah. And that's what I texted you. Like, I feel like I have taken drugs and I don't remember taking drugs because that's what the movie feels like.
Yeah, right. You're right. Yeah, they think it's the plague and
it's a mix of the two.
It's a mix of them, yeah.
So that is a bad plan on the vampire's part.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to wipe out your food supply.
I mean, he was in that little tent.
But maybe he can't control it.
No. So Werner Herzog really wanted it to be like, this is supposed to be a sympathetic Dracula because, it is shown that he really can't control it. And I think that's how they do it, why he looks like he's strung out and stuff. It's like, he's not really evil. It's just like, this is what I got to do.
Right.
And I need it or I'm miserable and I'm going to die. And it kind of sucks, but this is what life is.
The whole thing was like a fever dream.
And by the way, speaking of not having a Renfield, well, he has a Renfield, but like not having helpers when he finally unloads, he has to.
Oh, I love that scene. We're going to get there.
Oh, sorry.
I love
that. Made me fall in love with the movie right there.
I thought that was a fantastic choice. But before we get there, as he's arriving, Renfield is going insane.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm watching this and I was like, if I were his nurse, I would sedate him so hard and so fast. He is so out of control. He's so, and I was like, oh my God, please knock him out. Please knock him out. So the whole town comes to see the ship, which is great because that's the quickest way to spread the disease. Yeah. Everybody shows up, not washing their hands. They're touching everything. I'm like, perfect.
And then they bring the captain in, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So then they bring the captain in. Everybody, it's like the coolest thing to ever happen to town, apparently, because everybody is around this plagued body.
Which they don't know.
Rats are everywhere.
They mention, they're like, oh yeah, it's probably plague. They're like, plague? And no one goes, everyone who's been in contact with the body should stay here. Instead, they go home and shut your doors. I'm like, what the Go home to all the people who haven't been near the body yet.
Yes. So this is when we see the scene that you were talking about, which is Dracula's up. Thousands of rats are fleeing off of this ship. And he has to carry his own coffin, but he does it like sneaky sneak.
Yeah, it's just so funny seeing the classic stereotypical Nosferatu doing like hard labor, like, and he's not graceful.
And I love that it's like easy for him because he's so strong.
I guess because it's strong, but I guess
it's awkward.
It's awkward. But it's just like, he didn't have like levitating power. He couldn't mind control people to help him. He's like,
But the best part is he looks like a kid that stole a cookie.
Yeah.
He's like carrying this coffin, and he does it multiple times because he has more than one coffin.
Funny running.
I loved that scene. I do got to give you like that scene.
It's good
because who's gonna do it?
Yeah, and he leaves them all over. Because in the original novel, they had directions to where to send the dirt.
So good,
but not here. He's like, I'll put one coffin here.
But I just imagine him like. Like sneaking around.
Well, he's not really having it. I like that he puts it in one place. And as he's walking, there's a cross. He's like,
Oh, yes. I just said that. There's crosses on the wall, which he's not a fan of, but it doesn't stop him from moving in.
Yeah.
So he's like, I got to remember to get rid of that. Jonathan made it back home.
Yeah.
He looks horrible. Mm-hmm. The makeup is so good. He's like all sweaty and just... Yeah. Ooh, he looks terrible.
I've had some pretty bad fevers. I'm like, I felt like that guy.
He doesn't remember Lucy.
Yes. And I think that's part of like the vampirism is taking away his past. Yeah.
So Van Helsing diagnoses him as having a brain fever.
It's very common. Brain fevers are
It's a thing.
How are you a nurse and you don't just run into brain fevers every 5 minutes?
Mm-hmm. But Jonathan says, the sun is hurting me.
Yeah.
So you're like, okay, so he's mid-turn.
Yes. He's getting there.
He's mid-turn. He's turning.
Because in the original Nosferatu, the sun can kill him. Because even though it is basically Dracula, they didn't change it enough, actually.
So this is like famous vampire lore.
Yeah.
That until the Nosferatu movie, that was the first time a vampire dies by sunlight.
Yeah.
That's the first time.
Yeah.
So people just think that's always been a thing.
Yeah.
So when you tell them, no, Dracula can be out in the sun. He's not as strong.
Yeah.
And he, but he can go out if he has to.
Yeah.
It's not until Nosferatu.
Yeah. They never explain the book, but do you think if you drop like rice or something, Dracula would be like, I have to count it. 1, 2,
Yeah,
3,
we talked about this. You don't see that one really ever. That's an old one, the rice or the seeds or whatever.
Yeah.
If you throw it down, they have to stop and count it. But I think they use that in What We Do in the Shadows.
And they use it in X-Files.
Yes.
The Bad Blood episode. Yeah.
I love that episode.
It really made up for the other really bad vampire episode from season 2. What was it called? It was called 3. That one sucked. Bad Blood's great.
Bad Blood is fantastic.
Yeah.
And the thing about them each telling their version of what happened got used in Supernatural.
Yeah, it's a great time.
Such a good thing. So Lucy's brushing her hair, as one does when her husband has forgotten her and is clearly dying.
Yeah, well, she needs more ventilation to her head to alleviate the brain fever.
just going to brush my hair. And we see Dracula's shadow in the mirror, which was so cool.
This was done really well.
Yes.
The shadow coming in and then he's in the room off to the side. I assume that was like
that was so well done.
A fake mirror and the actress is there and there's a body double in the front. That's how I think.
It was so well done.
Yeah.
She turns around and he's like, I'm Dracula. And she's not like, what are you doing in my bed?
Again, all these vampire movies, I'd be like,
Everybody has such good manners. They would never deign to not be polite.
Yeah.
And she's like, I know you from Jonathan's diary. So she's already read the diary. And she's like, wait a second. You're that guy that sucked on my husband's finger and said I have a nice throat.
You should be like, did I say Dracula? I meant Alucard. I meant Phil. I'm Phil
Jones.
Phil Jones.
Burger, because it's Germany. So she says, John will not die. So I think she's on to what's going on, but she's already determined that she'll do everything she can.
Yeah.
So
well, she's actually researching.
Let the girls do it. Just saying.
Well, it's because Quincy. If Quincy was there, he would have figured it out right away.
Where is Quincy? Where's Quincy when we
You would be like, hey, you Europeans, let me have my American brains take a,
From now on, I'm just going to say, if only Quincy.
I've seen this before. You guys got a Dracula. I deal with the
But because he's American, he starts every sentence with howdy.
Howdy there.
Howdy.
I see you got yourself a Dracula.
Dracula?
I'm going to go take care of him.
Don't you worry, little lady. Because that's how Americans talk.
Yeah. And then he rips off his shirt like Hulk Hogan. What are you doing, Quincy? Yeah.
Quincy. All right. So Dracula, again, whines about being alive forever. This is kind of his go-to. Whenever he gets called out on bad behavior, he cries about the fact that he's been alive for hundreds of years and nobody can ever understand him. So he says, come to me, be my ally, and it will be your husband's salvation.
Yeah, so I'll spare the husband.
So he's like, if you want your husband to live, you're going to come with me.
And she should be like, you mean, because he's
not go well.
Yeah, he's not really subtle. She should be like, oh, I get it. You're going to make him like a Dracula and that'll be technically, I get it. You're conning me.
So she reveals her cross necklace.
Yeah. She doesn't fall for it. I like that. I like that she's like, oh, fuck off, dude.
I like her.
Yeah.
I like her a lot.
Yeah.
And then Dracula retreats. Renfield escapes. Which is why you should have sedated him.
Is this when they have the scene together?
Yes.
Dracula couldn't look more annoyed with Ren. And I feel like that was the actor shining through.
Yeah.
And Klaus being like, oh my God, get away. He literally slaps him away.
Awful. That Renfield character is horrible. Horrible. So Lucy's now reading the vampire book that the Romany woman gave to John. So she knows who Dracula is, she knows what he is, and she knows what she needs to do. Yeah. So she learns if a woman pure of heart distracts him to miss the rooster's first crowing, then she can defeat him. So she knows exactly what she needs to do.
How the lady figure that out?
It's very specific. It's very, very specific.
What if it was a lady vampire? Would it be like a man?
Maybe. And what if you go through all that just to find out you're not as pure of heart as you thought you were? Whoops. But she's like, but she's not all in yet.
Yeah.
Dracula instructs Renfield, travel north, and the plague-filled rats will follow you and spread the disease. So he's specifically trying to spread the plague.
Yeah.
Which, again, I'm like, that's your food source. Yeah. It just kind of seems like a bad idea.
You know what I think it is? I feel it's so he can get rid of some victims without, if everyone's dying at once, they're looking for yeah. I think we figured it out.
So there you go.
If everyone's dying, he could pick people up and no one will look.
Die of the plague, you're not going to notice the 20% that are dying of exanimation.
Because they're just going to group them in and they'll probably burn the body so you can't investigate. I think that's what it is. I figured it out. Again, if Quincy was there, he's like, you better get these darn rats in the
Well, if it was America, it would be tuberculosis. Because that was what everybody died of.
He's going to spend tuberculosis. You got to put these rats in the incinerator. Get rid of them right now.
Just shovel.
Yeah.
Like all the rats need to go.
Draculars do that. You got to stop.
Draculars. I cannot, the amount of rats. Yeah. By the end of the movie, I was like, I just don't feel clean.
Yeah. Rats don't bother me. I mean, here's the thing. if I was on a movie set with trained rats, I'd be fine. If I'm in New York in the subway and a million rats come out, I'm going to be like, rats don't bother me, but I don't want to be near them.
And watching this movie, these are disease-filled rats.
Yeah.
Out of control.
They're Dracula rats. Ratulas. I tried.
That's it.
I tried.
I gave you a chance.
Dratulas. There, that one's even better. Dratulas.
Stop it. The town is full of rats at this point. Thousands and thousands of rats. Lucy is trying to tell the men of the town, I know what to do. I know how to save everyone, but no one's going to listen to her because she's a hysterical female and she has a tiny brain.
Yes, which has a fever, we learn.
Yes. She shows Van Helsing everything. He still doesn't believe her.
No. Yeah, Van Helsing in this one is not like this character.
Fleshed out.
This is one case where they probably didn't need to do the actual name of the character because it is very much not Van Helsing.
Yeah. I just imagine the writers being like, what was that one guy's name? Oh, yeah. Name him that. So she goes to Dracula's new house. She sees the coffins, so she knows she's not crazy. Breaks up communion wafers to put in the soil so he can't come back to his coffin. Mina is dead.
Yeah.
We never really get to know Mina at all.
Yeah, no. She's barely there. She's cannon fodder.
Mina is not dead by the plague.
Yeah. See, this is it. I guess they caught on. They're like, wait a minute. I'm noticing these holes.
Right.
Yeah.
Brain fever.
The brain fever must have been so hot that blood squirted. No, it's not the brain fever.
Oh, Lord. Lucy pours salt around Jonathan to protect him. So in this world, salt will, I guess, protect you from vampires.
Yeah.
But it also traps him in.
Yeah.
So
well, that is a thing. Yeah, that is a thing in like I've heard that in vampire.
Normally with ghosts.
Huh?
Normally it's a ghost thing, sometimes a witch thing.
There's ghosts, but also they did it with recently in Renfield. The movie Renfield, they had the salt circle. So yeah, I'm sure that's from something. That's the problem.
I loved Renfield.
Yeah, it was good. It was good.
I will fight everybody.
The thing is, like, there's no like definitive vampire lore thing because every culture has it and they change it.
Which is the whole point of the podcast. Is every episode is a whole new universe with all new rules.
And Bram Stoker, some drunken Irishman, was like, I don't know, they turn into smoke.
Again, I swear that he was like, no one's ever gonna read this.
I did love an interview with the vampire where Brad Pitt like calls him just a drunken Irishman, or was it Scotsman or Irishman? One of those.
Drunken Irishman.
Yeah, so no, there's no drunken. That drunken Irishman made a bunch of shit up.
Yeah. That's been used many times.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen? Oh no, The Boys of County Hell.
No.
Highly recommend.
Okay.
Highly recommend.
Okay.
It's an Irish one.
Okay.
And it's different and it's creative and it plays on that whole thing.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, you'll love it. So she's protecting Jonathan by pouring salt around him because even to the very end, she is going to protect her man.
Yeah, she wants to actually save him.
She lures Dracula to her, which we never understand. Like, does she just be like, come and get me? Or like, she just knows he's going to show up?
I'm guessing because there is some kind of psychic link. She can maybe be like, come to me, or maybe she took the cross off to really draw him in. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We just saw that in another one where I think it was Horror of Dracula, where she like readies herself for bed, opens the doors to allow, and goes and lays down and opens it up. And I was like, I call that an invitation.
Yeah, that really is.
That's an invitation.
That really is.
I don't want to Nick, that's an invitation. So he starts to feed and she keeps him distracted so that he doesn't hear the rooster crow. Nosferatu has got a handful.
Yeah.
He is taking advantage of this moment.
Yeah.
And it goes on for an uncomfortably long time.
I mean, it has to because she is supposed to distract him. Also, I guess, spoiler for Midnight Mass. That kind of reminds me how the vampire Midnight Mass got distracted and got carried away.
Midnight Mass was so good.
It was good. It was good. But that was kind of the same thing where it was distracted and it wasn't paying attention. It was like, oh, shit.
So then he kind of starts to come to and she pulls him back down.
Yeah.
And he's right back at it.
Yeah.
So she is drained, but Dracula falls to the ground.
Yep.
Van Helsing arrives.
Oh,
and
wait, real quick.
Oh.
When he opens up the window and the sun's there and his eyes are pure white and he's just like a corpse at that point. That was cool.
So this is a trope I hate, which is the fast sunrise.
Yeah.
And we see it all the time. And I understand it's for timing and all that. Yeah. But the sun is out. The eyes turn white. He kind of falls down to the ground. Van Helsing shows up and he's like, maybe she was right.
Yeah.
Maybe it wasn't brain fever.
I'm going to go steak. And then this reminds me.
My bad.
Yeah.
So he gets the biggest steak. It looks like a fence post.
Where did he get that?
It's comically large.
But he goes upstairs, and this reminds me of the Bela Lugosi Dracula, where you just hear him get killed off screen.
Yes.
You just
And
hear,
that's all
you
you
just hear,
needed.
but here you just hear thump,
Yes.
thump.
Yes.
And Jonathan's like, no, don't do that.
Yeah. So at this point in time, he comes back down. We know that Lucy's dead.
Yeah.
She has sacrificed herself.
Yeah.
Now Dracula is dead, but Jonathan is turned.
Yes.
Jonathan is turned.
And he calls whoever's alive in this town, because everyone else kind of
And
went
he's like,
insane.
That doctor just murdered those people upstairs.
They never check.
Yeah. They put him under. The best is the whole arrest scene.
Why?
I don't do arresting. We'll go get this person. He's dead. We'll go get that.
At the very
He's dead.
end of the movie, it turns into like a comedy.
Yeah, it was
In
like
the
a
last-
Mel Brooks movie.
Yeah,
all of a
it got.
sudden.
I've
Yeah.
never arrested anyone before. We'll figure it out. And then he goes, Van Helsing goes, where are you taking? He's like, I don't know, the prison.
What do you want me to do? I am like, first off, the guy who's doing the arresting is about 107
I
years
know.
old.
Wait, and then Jonathan, they're like, why are you standing in some salt? It's like, oh, it's so dirty. You should sweep it right now. Sweep it right now. And then he does. And he's like, ha ha.
But the sun is up.
Yeah.
So how does Jonathan leave?
Well, he's covered in all black when he rides on the horse.
Okay.
I think that might be it, where like if you cover yourself enough, like, that was one of my problem with the very first Blade. I'm like, really?
the sunblock and then the visor and the cover.
The visor and everything I was cool with,
fine.
but when he was just out in daylight with the sunblock, I'm like, oh, come on, no.
Yeah, and they've used that in a lot of things.
Yeah, well, there's my favorite one was I stole this for Mummy Cop. Even though Dracula Mummy Cop could be out in the daytime, in Fright Night 2. The vampire, she just has an umbrella out. I'm like, oh, that's enough, apparently.
We see this a lot with the umbrella.
The umbrella. I'm like, oh, yeah, that's how light works.
Right. So there are vampires that basically die every day,
Yeah.
like in True Blood. Like they're not getting up for anything. But then there's vampires that can be up. And as long as they have a little umbrella, they're good.
And I guess with him, he's like, oh, I'm just wrapped all in black, and I'm going to get on my
So
horse
he
and
takes
take off. Probably to the north
town
to meet.
is dead. His
Yeah.
wife is dead. He is now the head vampire.
Yeah, he's got to go meet Renfield.
Oh my! Could you imagine those two? The most annoying movie in
That'd
the
be
world.
great.
Because Jonathan is just a weak character. Renfield is terribly annoying. And I'm just like, oh no.
Well, luckily we didn't get a follow up to that. We got Nosferatu in Venice, which is a sequel in name only, where
Yes.
Klaus Kinski famously, well, he did some horrible stuff, but famously he showed up with a full head of hair, and he's like, "No, I'm not doing that makeup again." And they're like, "Oh, I guess we're not
Apparently,
doing
the makeup
that."
artist was the only person he got along with.
That's funny. Yeah, I mean, it's not the makeup's fault, but
I
yeah.
know. So, did you know that Robert Englund based the movements of Freddy off of this character? Yeah, I read that last night. I was watching Nightmare on Elm Street.
Really?
And I just love to look at lore. And Robert Englund based the movements of Freddy on this. So go back and watch it now.
I guess I'll watch it. And
I guess
see.
he was like inspired by the
guess
way
this-
he
this
moved, because it's
stuff, maybe.
inhuman.
Maybe.
It's just like inhuman, unsettling movements.
Robert Englund's stunt double from the alleyway scene based his movements off the Tasmanian devil when he went, "Ah!"
Really?
No, but in that scene where it's the body double running, because
Yes.
remember she bumps into the real Freddy, but the body double's like,
Yes.
it cracks me up.
I know.
I'm like, who thought this was good?
I know. So I watched it the first time, texting you like, that was a movie
Yeah.
that I just watched.
And I'm like, clearly she loves it. It's going to be her favorite.
So then I watched it the second time so I could take my notes because I'm taking this very seriously.
Yeah.
I have someone as famous as you on the podcast. I got to take it seriously.
Yeah.
And still, I don't get it. So you love this movie.
I love it. It's the atmosphere is where it really shines. The story is good. It's not spelled out the best. Like even we were kind of confused by the plague. I think we got there and figured it out. But it's just like it's like a really good experience to go through. I don't know. It's just the music works, the atmosphere works. When it isn't scary, it's oddly comedic and entertaining with Klaus just being a fucking weirdo.
So weird, and nobody seems to care at all.
Yeah.
That he is
Yeah.
so bizarre.
And like I said, like my favorite Dracula is still the Coppola movie, and I feel like he
Yes,
took elements
same.
of other really good movies, and I feel like he took the whole like unrealistic rule, like nature being all messed up. I think he got
so we talked about
this.
that. Coppola wanted for the laws of physics to be suspended when the vampires.
And I feel like a lot of that comes from.
I
this.
like that. Okay.
Yeah.
And we did get the Creatures of the Night line.
Yes.
We didn't get the wine one, which bummed me out, but he did say, "Listen to them, the children of the night."
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay.
When it comes to 70s Dracula stuff, was Dan Curtis's Dracula in the 70s with Jack Palance?
Yes.
Yes, that one's also pretty good.
Did you see Frank Langella's?
Years ago. That's
I
another
just
one.
recently watched it. I loved it.
That's another one we rewatch. And I want to watch the Christopher Lee one that's not Hammer. He was in one that wasn't Hammer.
Right.
Where I think he actually had the mustache, which is from the book. I think.
Right.
But yeah, no, I like the Dan Curtis one, which is actually really cool. But no, this one is out of the 70s Draculas I've seen, this is my favorite.
Okay. So,
And I mean, it's not so much Dracula as it is Nosferatu.
Yeah.
And I love the original Nosferatu, but like this just has everything working for it. And hopefully the new Nosferatu takes some elements from it.
Oh, I'm going to be there first showing. I'm very, very excited. But for me, I felt like this movie was written and then filmed and then edited by 3 different people who didn't talk to each other. That's what it felt like to me. It felt very disjointed. But again, I don't think people ever expected someone to sit down and pick apart the lore and the rules and the, well, I don't understand this part and why would this be happening? You're supposed to suspend disbelief, fall into this world and just take it for what it is. But it did leave me with a lot of questions. It's memorable.
Yeah.
I'll give it that.
Yeah, it's very memorable.
And I'm a big fan of being creative, being different. This was a different interpretation, which good for you for doing something different. But I couldn't get past Renfield's character. As soon as he walked on screen, I'm like, get this guy out of here. I hated him. And Klaus Kinski's.
Yeah.
It's hard to watch because it felt so rogue. I just felt like he was doing his own movie and he didn't care if everyone around him was a part of it or not.
Well, I mean, Dracula is supposed to be
I guess so, yes.
very different than other people. Yeah, so I guess it works for that. I can get people not being super into it. I mean, he didn't hate it though, right?
I didn't hate it.
Yeah.
And I think that any self-respecting vampire fan needs to watch this movie.
It's good. It's good.
It is. It's referenced in a lot of things.
Great poster, by the way.
Great poster.
Beautiful poster.
The imagery, I mean, I've seen scenes from this many, many times.
Yeah.
So to sit down and watch it completely, I'm glad I did it. And I don't know that I would have done it if you hadn't asked to do it. It probably would have been way down my list.
When you said 70s vampires, if it wasn't...
You immediately responded.
If it wasn't this, it would have been the Dan Curtis one. But yes, this for sure.
You didn't even breathe.
No,
you
I
came
love
right
this
back.
one.
I want to do
I've talked about this multiple... I did a stream with my friend Adam Does Movies where we did like vampire movies. And I keep telling him like, you should really check this one out. I feel like the original might be not up his alley, but like, give this one a shot. Let me know what you think. Everyone should definitely check this one out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is.
Solid.
It is. I mean, as vampires go, he is a solid evil character.
Yeah.
Not sexy.
Yeah.
Not alluring.
No.
Not seductive. Just like straight evil
A
and
bit sympathetic if you go for like the whole like addict thing where he's not really in control. Then he's kind of sympathetic, I feel like. But yeah. You're like, nah, fuck him.
his motivation was to get to Lucy.
Yeah.
And he didn't care how many people he wiped out to do it.
Yeah.
And he was trying to get the husband out of the way. So like he might say that he's just sad and lonely, but he's calculating in everything that he's doing. And he even says to Renfield, like, take the rats and spread it all north. So he knows exactly what he's doing.
Yeah.
I had no sympathy for him at all.
Okay.
And I wish Lucy had made it.
Yeah. It would have been good to have. But I mean, it sucks because like it's like her sacrifice stopped and it ended up not really being for much because there was another vampire. Yeah.
It's a dark ending. So
Yeah.
she's sacrificed for nothing.
Yeah, it sucks.
Yeah, it's a bummer.
Yeah.
Well, tell everybody where they can find you. I know you said it in the beginning.
You can find me at Hack the Movies on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. You can go to hackthemovies.com. Check it out. We talk about movies new and old, mostly pre-recorded. We do some live episodes. I do a bit of streaming. I have a second channel, Hack the Movies Clips and Streams, but also Twitch. Just follow Hack the Movies on everything. You will find me. And if you become a super fan, I got a Patreon.
And we will both be at Monster Mania.
And we will both be at Monster Mania.
In close proximity.
Yes. Maybe if this is the one year where they change it, we're gonna sound like jerks on this.
Well, I'm gonna insist.
Yeah. We're usually across or diagonal from each other. So yeah, check us out on Monster Mania. It's gonna be a fun time. Yep.
I'm prepared. I'm gonna spitballs at you through the whole thing, especially when you're talking to fans in the most inappropriate, unprofessional way. Well, thank you so much for doing this.
No
You're
problem.
actually starting spooky season on the podcast.
Yes. When does this come out? Early October?
It's the first weekend of October.
Yes.
So all my other guests have to follow you, which, that's a tough one.
Why would you sabotage them?
So next week will be 80s and 90s.
Nice.
Yeah.
We're probably going all in on horror right now. So a lot of my stuff isn't shot yet, so I can't tell you what it's going to be because it might change.
But speaking of horror, we're about to throw Tony in the well. So we got
Yes, I'm going to have to go into the well, Buffalo Bill's well. But yeah, that's it for me.
All right. That was fun.
Boom. All right.